Have you ever wondered what it's like to go on a holiday with 500 Thai factory workers? It is intense. Okay, so quick background first of all on what the hell was going on. A Thailand company trip is an annual exercise where large factories here take their staff on an all expenses paid overnight trip in Thailand. A trip with the factory staff is like a masochist's wet dream who has a deep dislike for functioning livers and ears. And I totally understand why. See, in Thailand, minimum wage is roughly 340 baht a day or around 10 USD, and I hate to point out the obvious, but life is pretty skint when you're earning that kind of salary, even in Thailand, especially as nearly every single male factory worker seems to smoke, drink, and have only one goal in life: to own one of those overpriced American-style pickup trucks. So when the company offers them a weekend off work with a free holiday, unlimited food, and endless supply of booze, it's like waving a red flag in front of 4,000 bulls that have been caged all year. And because I'll likely never go to Pamplona, the very second I could, I issued a memo to HR to change my itinerary from a quiet weekend at Khao Yai with my office staff to traveling with 500 production line workers from Factory 2 to Nakhon Nayok. It all began on a Saturday morning in Chonburi, where I found myself sitting on a bus wondering if the person in charge of the stereo had made a bet that he could wake up everyone in Cambodia. See, Thai people have this innate belief that the louder the music is, the more fun everyone must be having. But when there are 60 buses parked next to each other, all playing different songs so loud that the local seismology office is registering it as a fucking earthquake, it stops resembling anything like music and instead sounds like the worst DJ on earth is having an epileptic fit. I've been in Thailand for 10 years and I've never been to the Royal Palace. I've never visited Khao San Road or recall even going to a temple. Anyone can do that stuff. But how many foreigners get the chance to experience a weekend in Thailand with 500 psychopaths? So when picking which of the 10 buses I would go on the trip on, I made a heartfelt request for the staff to add me on the bus with the craziest people on the trip. In the end, the winner was bus number 7, and it was time for the mobile party to hit the road. Now these trips always have these big ass buses that have no purpose beyond looking cool and deafening everyone within a 10-mile radius. They're definitely not designed for safety, but like that's ever been a priority with anything in Thailand. Personally, I'm surprised that these buses have never showed up at Guantanamo. I mean, the military wouldn't have even had to change the music playlist. Each bus also comes with its own tour guides whose job it was to act as nannies for the weekend to the 50 drunks that they'd been made responsible for. So their pleas of everyone to sit down while they explained the itinerary fell on deaf ears. I mean literally, because the only thing anyone on the bus heard for the next 7 hours were the hundreds of speakers in every nook and cranny blaring Thai dance music, and the only feasible way to escape the force of bass trying to crush your chest every alternative beat was to get out of your seat and dance. Which, to be fair, wasn't really an issue because that was everyone's intentions anyway. Before we'd even left the company, the aisle of the bus was filled to the brim with girls going absolutely mental, only ever pausing to down half a bottle of whatever alcoholic drink was bouncing around in their hands. Now, I've been around Thais dancing for a decade, and as far as I can gather, the idea behind the style of Isan dancing is to convince everyone around you you're having a seizure, with bonus points added for every "hey" you scream. I truly don't get why when Thais have an event, they always trot out the traditional style dances where the women look like they're trying to break their fingers in slow motion. As far as I'm concerned, Thailand would gain a lot more soft power by lining a stage with as many sakois as possible and just letting the music rip. And yeah, I understand the issues with it, mainly that they'll never get off the stage again, because once these chicks get started, they just don't stop. Now, I tend to view Thais as a bashful lot who will have a nervous breakdown if they slightly trip over in front of their friends, but combining alcohol and music with Isan folk, you somehow end up with a race of people who seem to have no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. Hell, if World War III ever breaks out in Asia, I wouldn't bet against Thailand winning, as long as the powers that be keep a continuous supply chain of whiskey and EDM headed to the front line. Which is why when our convoy of 10 buses arrived at our first toilet stop, it took barely a minute for the staff to turned the entire petrol station into a massive dance festival. Factory staff were dancing and drinking everywhere like Songkran never ended. And I always wonder how ridiculous this scene must look to some random person trudging to work on a Saturday at 8:30 in the morning who needs some gas, only to find a few hundred people treating the PTT store like a goddamn open-air nightclub. And the party only ends when the tour guides slash parents finally get all the 10 buses to stop the music at the same time to yell at everyone to get back on the buses. Because by the time that they coordinated 9 out of the 10 buses to stop the music, some drunk guy is just gonna run onto the bus and turn the music up themselves. So the dance party just keeps moving around and around to the loudest playing speakers until the tour guides finally get smart enough to tell the bus drivers to stop letting drunks control the stereo. So in the end, what were only supposed to be 15-minute piss stops always take between 45 minutes to an hour each time. But again, this is Thailand. Like, even safety pales in comparison with the concept of being on time. On that note, I have no idea why they even bother making schedules for these things in the first place. Nothing ever goes to plan. These trips normally consist of stopping somewhere for a school excursion type of experience. For this trip, we were going to go whitewater rafting. You know, because chucking 500 annihilated people in tiny boats being smashed by rapids definitely sounds like a good idea. But on the way to the location, 2 of the buses broke down and put us 2 hours behind schedule. And because Thais do everything in groups, it meant that all the working buses sat idly the entire time too. And yet for the entire 2 hours we were stuck on the side of the road, not once did the music stop, the dancing slow down, or the drinking curtail. Honestly, I don't think anyone on my bus even knew we weren't moving. Especially this chick, who came out of nowhere to take the lead as the most nuts person on the bus.
It was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
Thais just don't quit. Being out of it means only one thing in the land of Sangsong. They simply need more power. And if alcohol isn't the answer, then only one other thing will suffice: food. Our next step was at a restaurant with what I would describe as the quintessential group Thai meal. If you've never been to a bulk prepaid group meal in Thailand, then you're not missing out on anything. It always consists of the same dishes every time: tom yum goong, a fried fish, fried vegetables, something spicy, an omelette, and unlimited rice. Now, I've had this exact same group of dishes so many times now that I figured they must be a magical combination of the cheapest meals possible to avoid Thai people complaining and the restaurant being able to make as much profit per person as possible. It's also usually around now when the factory staff decide that they've drunk enough and aren't shy to talk to the white dude anymore. Well, that and the restaurant didn't have music blasting at the same decibels as a jet engine. But for anyone who's been in a situation like this in Thailand, you can probably relate to the difficulty of being asked the exact same question 100 times in a row from every person you talk to. Where do you come from? Do you like Thailand? Do you like Thai people? Do you like Thai girls? Do you like Thai food? Now, not only does that stop them from doing what they want, but it's also difficult to be able to sit back and learn from them when they're catering to hierarchy or guests rather than just chilling out amongst their peers. I like witnessing things like how during the meal they'll randomly pick up some food and put it on another person's plate without saying a word, like, "You have to try this," or "Stop being pedantic about your weight and just eat more." I like how they get excited at seeing if every meal, despite it being a dish that they've probably eaten 10,000 times in their life, will be good enough to remember for years to come. I like how you see if there's a woman at a table with men, she will stand back first, make sure every guy has a drink, rice on their plate, and access to the food before she sits down to eat herself. I like how no one out of the 500 people is sitting there saying, "I don't like any of this food. Can someone tell the kitchen to make something unique for me instead?" And I like how, despite the vast majority of people being absolutely shit-faced in the restaurant, there was no one acting like a fool, no one trying to start a fight, and no one screaming to be the center of attention. This is why I try and remain in the background and observe. I kind of hate the term the real Thailand because it's along the lines of implying that you ain't seen America until you've been to a Kentucky trailer park, but it is definitely true the world over that you learn to appreciate things better when you see how people behave who don't have much. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that some of the social behaviors in real Thailand make Westerners look like absolute pigs. Now, at the same point, I found out later everyone said the food sucked, the restaurant was absolutely trashed with our rubbish by the time we finished eating, and we left the restaurant 40 minutes late because some drunk people couldn't survive the 30-minute trip to the hotel without a popsicle stick. So it's not exactly all peace, love, and mung beans either. And we made it to the hotel around 3 p.m. and on all my other trips, the period between check-in and the party at night consisted of most people getting a bit of shut-eye and taking it easy in preparation for a big one. But my chance at that was blown when they handed me the envelope with my hotel room key and realized it was empty. Sometimes you've just got to kind of mentally float off into the clouds here to avoid thinking dumb shit. 500 Thais, 260 rooms, not a single problem. One foreigner, one room, can't find the fucking key for an hour. But instead of pulling the tinfoil hat out, I walked out to see what all the ruckus was outside, only to find there was no way in hell anyone was sleeping pre-party that wasn't already in a coma, at least not with the band bus rocking the courtyard. And I don't understand why I've never seen these buses anywhere else in the world before, because they're absolutely awesome. Yeah, it's kind of cramped inside the bus for musicians, and the drummer barely has enough room to play even an electronic drum kit, but considering the pull-out stage can handle 3 people standing on it, you could easily chuck a 4-piece rock band on there and have a massive concert anywhere you like. And that's what happened. Okay, well, not exactly rock music. I mean, most Southeast Asians still consider U2 on the same terms as Slayer. So while some people chilled in the pool or tried in vain to take an afternoon nap, they still got at least 300 people out enjoying the show for a couple of hours. And on the other side of the courtyard was an endless supply of free somtam, free noodles, free barbecue, free fish, and of course, free alcohol for whoever turned out. But by now, I'd hit my first dose of paracetamol after 7 hours of bus carnage, so I retreated back to my hotel room to chill out once I figured out where my key had gone off to. And besides, I knew what was coming. I've always been much more of a vampire and prefer to come alive when the sun goes down. Now, I guess it didn't really matter what time the night party started because most people had already started drinking at 7 a.m., but 6:30 is still pretty early in Thailand for a party to start. And I was kind of half expecting no one to be there yet, as when I walked past the pool, there were still around about 30 people swimming in it, and knowing how long Thai people take to get ready for anything, that would mean at least an hour until they got to the party if they left that instant. When I arrived, there were already around 100 or so people in the room, and before I even sat down, I got offered the first beer I cheerfully said yes to that day. Not a particularly good idea as I'd barely eaten anything over the entire day, but after watching hundreds of Thais have a ball being absolutely shit-faced, from sunrise to sunset, I was pretty excited about finally joining them in the stupidity. Which should explain why I don't have much video from the night, because I was well fucked before the clock even struck 8, and by then on, all I wanted to do was dance, mingle, and have fun, rather than continue passively observing. Now at these parties, they always have what Thais call coyote dances, and I have no idea if they took the name from the movie Coyote Ugly, or that term has been around for ages. And Thailand again showed that they're down for equality, with the company also covering the women by getting male coyote dancers as well. But I mean, this is Thailand, so it shouldn't be that surprising that how many gay dudes came out of the woodwork when they appeared on stage. Also, every year, Thai guys will use me as their inroad to assault the coyote girl that they've fallen in love with for the night. They'll run up to me, they'll grab my hand while holding a 20 or 100 baht note, and then drag me towards the girl that they like to shove it down her top. And it's not because they're trying to get me in on the act of tipping the girls with them, because they always hold on to the bills with me as if to somehow imply we were both in on it. My thinking is that, like, if it all goes pear-shaped and they get a little bit too frisky down the girl's top, they know you can just blame it on the falang. But what that means is I spend a fair bit of the night at the party being assaulted to commit sexual assault. Fucking Thailand, eh? Oh, also, you may be thinking, man, there was 300 drunk Thai girls with you. Why weren't you trying to get some ass, you gay pussy? Firstly, you're mean. Secondly, my rule from day dot of starting at my company was you don't shit where you eat. Work pays the bills and Thai people gossip like they're breathing air. And like a not so distant third, I'm actually happily married, though the happy part doesn't really matter to my wife because she's also Thai. Anyone who lives here should understand exactly what I'm talking about. Thai girls and their jealousy is about as sensible as a flat earther in a fucking globe store. So besides being content in my marriage and the incessant fear of having my dick cut off, I was perfectly happy to just drink and watch everything from the back unfolding before me. Plus I ended up having to leave the party just before midnight due to drunken idiocy. I was side stage of the band talking to another manager there, and because the music was so loud, we were doing that thing where you lean into each other's ear and yell to hear each other. Only at one point we both went for it at the same time and gave each other a Glasgow kiss. So I had to chill out and hold ice on my head for the next 45 minutes. And I'm glad I did, because by the time I figured I'd done enough to stop a lump, I ran into the chick that hadn't taken any of the same precautions as I had, and her forehead was already looking like it was sponsored by Titleist, Titleist. I don't fucking play golf. The rest of the night from here consisted of a shitload more drinking, mingling, and partying, and of course, mukbang in people's hotel rooms until the early hours. I can't recall much, let alone how I got back to my hotel room. The main thing that I do remember is someone turning on the loudest stereo in existence from around 6 a.m. for over an hour. It took that long before someone finally snapped. And it might seem crazy that the music lasted that long. Hell, I'm sure if it was in Australia, it would have been 30 seconds and there would have been a fight breaking out. But to give you a good example of how Thailand operates, the next day on the bus, everyone was obviously green as and looking to relax on their way home, except for one dude who hadn't slept the entire night and seemed hell-bent on drinking himself into oblivion. And damn, this dude was a rat shit. But this dude also decided that the party was far from over, so he went downstairs to the stereo and blasted the music louder than it had even been playing the day before. And despite 49 other people sitting on the bus, now all with no intentions on doing anything but quietly scanning TikTok or Facebook, not one person thought it would be a good idea to tell the guy, turn the music off and go fuck yourself. And while I admire Thai people's ability to not lose their shit in situations like this, as soon as we made it to our next stop, I grabbed the first tour guide I saw and told them to put me on a bus without any more psychopaths on it. Okay, so yeah, despite my intentions at the start of the weekend being to revel in the absolute crazy for 48 hours, turns out there is only so much goddamn Thai dance music at 120 decibels I can handle before I want to start handing out Glasgow kisses to people on purpose. Especially with a raging hangover and only 2 hours sleep. At the same point, I know that a year from now, when the next company trip is about to take place, I'll be absolutely pumped to go through with the madness all over again, because all your temples, tours, and tuk-tuks in Thailand, they're a dime a dozen. But to quote the words of the legendary Biggie, there ain't no party like a Thai factory party.